penultimate session here on the Agora stage. It was amazing. Thank you to Rachel for taking us through as well. So in just a moment, once we are all set up, we do have our final talk of the day. And I'm really excited about this one because it is the 4 Years From Now Awards. I've gone on about them a lot today. We have, before the end of this session, I will know who the finalists are as well for Wednesday. So they will come through any moment. So we will be announcing them at some point before we finish today. But right now, I'm going to be joined by two previous winners, not one, but two previous winners, to talk about going from zero to being a category changer, the impact winning the awards had on them, and the startup power to disrupt. So startups, they don't just innovate, they really have the power to rewrite the rules. And it's in a way that legacy companies can't always do. So please join me in welcoming on stage, as I said, two founders, both winners of the 4 Years From Now Awards. We have Marta Estrella, CEO of Kilimanjaro Quantum Tech, who won in 2024, and Jose Fernandez, CEO from Vanquish, who was the winner last year. So please put your hands together and welcome on stage. It is Marta and Jose. Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this session. I think your experience, not just of winning the awards, but also just disrupting spaces, is going to be completely invaluable. So let's kick off with a bit of an introduction. So if we start with you, Marta, would you mind just introducing yourself and, yes, what you do at Kilimanjaro?
Absolutely. So I'm Marta Starellas. I'm the CEO of Kilimanjaro. In Kilimanjaro, we build quantum computers. Quantum computers is a new generation of computing capabilities based on quantum mechanics, which is, I know, is very scary, but you shouldn't be scared because it's something that is very, very important for the future of digital technologies and the digital transformation.
Just before you go any further, what do you say to people when they do have that reaction when you mention quantum AI, quantum computers? How do you sort of get people on your side? We will talk about this in more detail in a moment, but just while you brought it up there.
Just tell them, just don't get scared, don't run away, hold a sec, I will explain, and you will realize it's not that hard. Honestly, it's very beautiful. It's the way we have to understand nature, to understand the world. Atoms build up everything that we can see and that we can create and so on. And it's the understanding at the very granular level of the atomic world, which is very, 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 very beautiful in my opinion. And it has a lot of impact in computation. So we learned how to use these mechanics to do information manipulation, data processing. And we need to realize that, I mean, if you've been around, you've seen that everything is about AI. And we need to think and realize this is not happening in a cloud. This happens in real infrastructure. And this has consumption. This takes a lot of resources. And quantum computing is the new way of doing more sustainable ways of doing computation and processing all this data without paying a very high cost in terms of resources and so on.
Amazing. Yeah. And like you say, when you break it down, it is very exciting. And we're going to talk about how that's sort of shaken the space up in just a bit. But before we do that, let's go over to you, Jose. Can you tell us a little bit about Vanquish and what it is that you do?
Of course. So Vanquish does alternative credit scoring. So we're an alternative credit bureau for the future of work. Banks, insurance providers, fintechs, they're trying to serve a new population that doesn't depend on monthly salaries, so monthly pay stubs, the same amount of money coming from the same employer every month for the same amount. So that creates a huge amount of uncertainty to any bank, any insurance provider that wants to serve this kind of clients. Traditional credit bureaus don't have a lot of information on anyone that doesn't have a salary, so that goes from gig workers to freelancers to creators to all the AI agent builders out there. None of them are going to have a 9 to 5. I believe AI, I believe, especially post-quantum computing, is gonna bring about an explosion of micro companies, right? Everyone, if you're an engineer, if you're an architect, you don't no longer need to join a firm to have that back office that support, because AI will do everything else for you. So all these individuals, they're going to be essentially contractors at a massive scale. And TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, the traditional credit bureaus of the world, they were born over 100 years ago, and they've barely changed their algorithms, their credit scores. So for them, anything that is not a stable monthly salary adds uncertainty, adds risk. That's an unfair analysis. So we help all the banks, all the financial institutions to better analyze the creditworthiness of these individuals.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that as well. So before we talk about the awards and the impact it had on you both, I would love to just talk about this whole concept of being a category maker or a category changer, however you wish to describe it. How do you start? So you've got this spark of an idea, or maybe a deck that you've put together. How do you take that and actually get it in front of people and get people to buy in, especially from those legacy companies that you were mentioning a moment ago, Jose? So in fact, let's start down the end.
Sure. I mean, I had the handicap of having to sell to large corporations as well as to investors with nothing but a deck. I'm sure we'll hear Kilimanjaro's story, which I think is going to be even more difficult because it's the European ecosystem. I gave birth to Banquish in the US. So the benefit of that is that you go to investors with a deck, right? It's a deck and it's a PowerPoint, and you're asking for a few million for that, the worth of that PowerPoint without an MVP. Just the expertise that you bring from your previous life, because you know what you're talking about, and conviction, right? Conviction in the future. I believe in being optimistic. I'm a very optimistic founder, so you go out there with conviction. You show the vision that you have for the future of work, for a more fair credit score for the future of work, and that works in those VC ecosystems that are ready to accept that they're optimistic, they're ready to accept that there can be better outcomes for current systems that haven't changed in too long. And then with corporations, to actually sell them the product, that takes a lot more, because they obviously deal with the trust of their clients. And they have to be very careful with what input they add to the risk process for them to give or deny a loan, give or deny insurance. That plays with people's lives. So that took a lot more work.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thank you. And Marta, how was your experience with that?
I think it might sound obvious, but you really need to be a strong believer of what you're doing, right? And it's very important that if you build something, you feel the passion to do so, because this gets transmitted to your audience. And if you don't have that, they won't feel that. That's the first ingredient. Second one, in quantum technology, it is hard to explain the technology per se. And you often end up going into a loophole. I don't sell that much to customers. We sell to customers. Yeah. But one of my main audiences is investors, so we are doing deep tech. So we really need to move to develop a lot of the technology in order to reach the final end, which is when the quantum computing capabilities will become highly democratized and scalable and industrialized. No? So you really need to invest constantly. You need to fundraise. And this audience tends to want to understand very well in very detail the technology, and sometimes it's just not easy. I mean, you cannot go into a whiteboard and do equations because you will lose them. Yeah. Communication and trying to bring the advantages of a technology that is so hard but so disruptive is one of the main points to be able to sell and transmit the importance and the criticality that it has what you're doing.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's initial part of the journey when you are alone, by yourself, maybe running ideas from around other founders or maybe even just family and friends. Do you have any advice for founders who are maybe starting out, who are potentially struggling with that process? Because I should imagine it's quite a lonely process sometimes. Whoever, we'll go over to Jose first. I could see you nodding on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I was a solo founder for Banquish. I do not recommend. It is a very, very lonely first part of the journey before you start getting, you know, executives like senior leaders to join you. Being a solo founder is very lonely. If already being a founder is lonely. My first startup, we were 3 co-founders, and we decided to move all together to the same apartment, very, very tiny apartment in Wall Street in New York. And we were all like, we painted all the walls in this kind of like whiteboard paint so we could all have ideas 24/7. We would wake up each other up at 3 a.m. So that was very intense. And then Vanquish, you know, that company got acquired, and then Vanquish, it was the middle of the pandemic, and I thought that Vanquish had to be born. So I pushed forward, and I tried to convince people to join me. I really tried to have co-founders. It's just very hard to convince people to drop their, you know, their jobs at, you know, Amazon or Meta or Alphabet to join a startup through a Zoom call, right? While you're, you know, cooped up in your apartment. So I wasn't able to. I failed at that. I just thought that I would still push forward, and at first I was like, okay, I'll get late co-founders, and then I kept on pushing forward, and eventually, you know, I was a sole founder for Vanquish. It's a very lonely existence. I think that because of AI, more of you, if you want to be founders, are going to end up being solo founders than traditionally before, because, you know, more of the things are going to be able to be done by AI. So I think that experience is going to be shared by more of you. I think you need to have a very full personal life in order to be able to survive that. I was telling you guys during the prep call, I have, for the first year in my company's website, I had on the team side, I had my dog as the chief morale officer of the company, because she was. So yeah, that says about everything.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And Marta, I know your journey is slightly different.
Yeah, but I also have moral office team. My 2 dogs are also there to support me. But it's true. So I really admire solo founders. I don't know how you managed, because it's a very lonely place. And my recommendation here, my piece of advice would be to make sure you find the right people to walk that journey with, because it's not an easy journey, and you have to hold each other's back in many situations that are not easy. And to have that chance is very, very good, to have somebody that understands what you are going through, and it's not family, because sometimes family cannot be the person to hear you complaining all the time about the company, and sometimes team members cannot be those either, because then they get worried, and only a founder can understand that.
Marta, if I have a hard time, if I fail at having my mom understand what I do, you with quantum computing, I mean, your family does not know what you're doing. They're not helpful.
That's so funny. Yeah, really interesting point though, because I know you spoke about having that full life outside of work, but it must be even more important when they don't understand what you're doing to get the right people on board. So what would be your advice about scaling and growing a team? What are you looking for? Is it people who maybe are on the same journey, got the same passion as you, or is it the people who maybe might rein you back slightly and go, look, let's look at this, or what's your process of scaling?
I don't know if I follow the right process, so this big disclaimer there, but what I look is what I mentioned at the very beginning, is passion. It's passion. It's not so much on the CV, honestly. I don't care what university you studied, as long as you have the background sorted out. Yeah. It's fine. It's passion. And I don't care if you are too young. I don't care if this is your first company experience. I don't care, as long as you believe in the project, because if you believe in the project, you will do whatever it takes to bring it forward. And what a startup doing deep tech, doing hardware, doing quantum computing, which is very, very hard at all the levels, doing it in Spain, doing it in Europe, where it's hard to find investment, that it's complex enough to add more complexity to it. So what we are looking is people like ready to pull over and move the project forward. And that's passion.
So passion.
Passion.
Has to be first.
Yes.
Great. And Jose, how about you?
I mean, I will, in essence, say the same thing as Marta. It's, I call it urgency and hunger, but it's essentially the same thing. So again, especially in the era of AI, where none of the tools that you are going to be using 90% of the time in 2 years exist right now, experience is definitely not as worth as much as hunger, as that urgency to make things happen today. If you can find someone who has enough technical ability to survive the next week in the company and is very eager, understands that sense of urgency of like things need to happen today, not in a week, not in a month, not in a year, planning the Gantt diagram. No, today they need to happen. That's the kind of people you want. And also that's honestly, in my experience, in every single one of my startups, in my experience, the majority of the leaders after 5 years in the company are people that started in much more junior positions that just, they kept on taking on themselves. They were proactive of like, what about we try this, or why don't we do this? Or you just say, okay, do you want to try that? Yeah, I'll try it. And then they take on more and more responsibilities, and suddenly they're leading teams and they're leading initiatives.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned there about people changing and pivoting, and obviously from day one to where you are now, a lot has changed. So do you have any advice about when there are those moments, so whether they're successes and leveraging that, or whether there are moments where potentially things didn't quite work out the way you thought they were going to? How do you navigate both of those things without, I guess, stalling? So, Jose.
I didn't fully hear. How do you navigate what two things?
Yeah, so how do you navigate when you have moments of success and leverage that to make sure that it moves forward with the team, but then almost moments where things haven't gone your way, things haven't gone the way you expected? And how do you navigate that with new teams and people who are as passionate as you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, again, my first startup where the three co-founders, we were all living together, and it was, the company was everything in our lives. That was not healthy. To be very clear, that was not healthy. I've grown personally a lot since then, because when we had a good week at work, life was wonderful, and if we had a bad week at work, our personal lives were also bleak. That is not the path forward, because resilience matters as much as urgency. If you have urgency and no resilience, you're not going to be a founder for long. And the only way you can have resilience is if you have some emotional distance between you and your company. You can do that one of two ways. You either have a very rich personal life because you're very lucky, and if so, good for you, because you have good families and good friends. Otherwise, you need to build that emotional distance with the company, so that whenever things are going very badly, it doesn't affect you personally. Whenever things are going very, very well, it doesn't also consume you, because you are more than your title in the company. And this, it sounds very philosophical, but this is a conversation you need to have with a lot of team members that feel very passionate, very, they bleed the company. Those people you need to take care of, and taking care of is also making sure when things don't go their way, don't overlook them. Don't say, don't brush it off if they're having a hard time. Make sure they understand that these things happen. You need to stay the course and grind away.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And honestly, there's no magic trick other than admit that startup life is hard, especially when you do hard technologies that are being invented on the way. And I always try to keep that in mind on the selection processes. So I try to be at the last interview in all the selection processes of the company. And the first thing I tell them, just make sure that this is going to be a roller coaster. Because that's the reality, and they need to be able to work and navigate uncertainty. Because if they are not, they are going to suffer. So I want to make sure they are ready for that. And I want to just say something that a team member mentioned to me last week, and I thought it was exactly the description of a startup. And he's a very bright engineer of the company, and he was saying, okay, Kilimanjaro is like a roller coaster. It's ups and downs, ups and downs. And he was like, and I love it, because we are at the down and we say, there's no way we are going to be able to achieve this in that amount of time. There's no way. And all of a sudden, we managed, and we are at the very up, but then we go down because something goes wrong. But we know that we'll go back to the up. And that's what moves them.
That's nice. So almost keeping those conversations open so people are aware.
Yeah.
Okay, well, talking about successes, I think it is the perfect time to mention 4 years from now awards. So, Marta, you were 2024, correct? So 2 years ago, Jose, last year, how was that process? We need to talk about how it's been, but let's start with the actual winning. So how was the whole process of being involved with the awards? Marta, if you want to
Right,
start.
I always say that this is my favorite event. That was the first year I went, and I had such a good memory of that day that I want to be here every year because I love it. I really love it. So it was a very special moment. It was a very special process. I remember at that point we were at, or I was in the company at a bit of a low, and that gave me the boost to get out of that bottom up to the top once again. So it was an amazing experience, and the audience was great, the jury was great, and all the process of preparing the pitch was very, very fruitful and very useful for the fundraise that we closed later at that point, and gave us visibility, it gave us a lot of exposure, which honestly is very good when you try to bring up and grow a company out of the early stage, especially here in Spain.
Amazing. And Jose, how about for yourself?
Yeah, so we celebrated twice at Vanquish because our objective was just to be a finalist. The Mobile World Congress and 4 years from now are amazing stages to gain legitimacy, especially for startups that offer products to corporates, to large institutions, in our case, banks, insurance providers. Many of them are present here, so it helps legitimize our product. So we wanted to be finalists, and we got there, and then we didn't expect to win. Our goal was, once we were finalists, like, okay, let's pitch like we would to a key client or a key investor. Let's just use this as a way to strengthen our muscle to convey what we do, to convey the value of what we're doing, the impact. Because I really tried to make it. It was the first time I did a pitch like that one. I tried to make it very personal, gave a personal experience from one of our clients and how we are able to drive financial inclusion to one person, because we always talk about the millions of revenue and the hundreds of thousands of people impacted, et cetera. But it's making sure that someone understands the struggle of a gig worker in a Latin American market and not having access to financial tools that are really critical for them to get back to work after their car breaks down and to be able to then afford to help their family out. And through this technology, being able to be fair to that person so they have access to the financial tool they deserve was a first. And we tried, again, we risked a lot because we didn't expect to win. We just wanted to take this as a chance to exercise that muscle. Because again, I mean, the previous winner was doing quantum engineering. We're not doing quantum, we're not doing rocket science, we're not going to win. So we celebrated twice. It was great.
Yeah, amazing. And I know, Marta, you touched on just a moment ago there about the impact it's had.
Yeah.
Credibility, growth, recognition, etc. But let's, before we finish, talk about how it's been for both of you post winning the award. Like, what impact has it had on both of your companies? So, seeing as you started touching on it there, Marta, do you wish to expand?
Yeah, so it gave us a lot of visibility. So since then, we started collaborating with GSMA. We started having a strong network at the 4 years for now, and also at the Mobile World Congress. Every time we come here, we see more familiar faces, and we get more conversations, more meetings, more presence. And at the end of the day, this is what you're looking. You're looking for from Kilimanjaro, we look for clients and potential projects and tenders. But there's a lot also of innovation teams here. There's a lot of political institutions from different countries. Typically, who buys a quantum computer at the moment is not a company, it's a government for critical infrastructure and supercomputing infrastructure, and here is the perfect place to do so. So we started getting recognized because kind of everybody knew, oh, you are the ones that won the 4 years from now in 2024. So that was a great opportunity for connection and having conversation going, and also investors. It gives investors credibility because you've been in front of a jury formed by investors, and they selected you from the rest of the companies because they believed in the project. So credibility and exposure, it's really the main advantage that this has had to us, which is huge.
Great, and Jose?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to measure, but the things that were directly impacted by us winning Startup of the Year here was we got clients in last year's conference. And then we also saw a ton of, we have no presence in Asia or Europe yet. We're present in all of the Americas. And we started seeing banks in Asia and in Europe, and one insurance provider in Europe as well, start playing with our sandbox. So we could see that they were playing with it, and we don't charge for that. And I was like, okay, and we didn't have any sales teams, we didn't have any effort to reach out to them. So that was, I mean, it was within the next 2 months after the event, so it was obvious it was because of it. And then the case study that GSMA did about us has been referenced in a lot of conversations with, we've seen it in these summaries that investors do about you, and these, so it was a great way for this machine of press and analysis to make an effort to try to understand what we do and how it improves not only banks' ability to assess risk, but also the ability of people to access the financial products they deserve. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Amazing. So lots, I think, is the simple answer to that, which is amazing. And what's next? What are you looking for? What are you working for? It sounds like we potentially are expanding over to Asia, maybe in the future, who knows? But
I was in Hong Kong a few weeks ago.
Go.
I mean,
yes. So yes, what's next? What can we look out for and expect? Or if there's anything we can help with here at 4 years from now? We're sitting in a room full of potential investors, potential peers, clients. Let's start with you, Jose.
So I'll say that Marta is fundraising.
Thank you.
No, yeah, it's we're definitely expanding into Europe and Asia now, and we're always looking to expand our use case beyond just banking and insurance. So yeah, reach out to me. I'm going to be around here tomorrow, next day. So just find me.
I'm fundraising. And we do have a booth here at the 4 years from now with the BSC, the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, and also at the Mobile World Congress at Hall 6, if you are interested. If not, just connect via the website. We are fundraising for growth. We are fundraising to scale up our infrastructure. So we've been deploying our infrastructure here in Spain in the National Center for Supercomputing, but we want to go one step beyond, and we want to start bringing this infrastructure outside Spain. So we're also expanding. We're exploring the US at the moment, and Asia.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. Like you say, you'll both be around, so
yes.
Do come and connect. And just before we finish, I have, as promised, got the list of the finalists for 4 years from now awards for this year. They've just come through. So we have Dr. Scrap, Neutral Trust, DOST, Connect Here, and Bios. So congratulations to them. I look forward to, they didn't appear behind me, I thought maybe they would, hearing more about them and seeing what happens on Wednesday. And I think we have an exact reason why you get involved. And congratulations to you both once again. Please join me in putting your hands together to Marta and Jose. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Perfecto.
Great. We are wrapping up then here on the Agora stage. But it is 6 o'clock, which means our happy hour is starting. So please do either go and have a little look around and explore, hang around. They both will be out if you want to have a chat with them. Or go to the terrace where we will have our networking drinks starting right now for the next hour. But thank you for joining us. Hope you had a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.